You know, I got a thing for lost media. It's kind of spooky in a way. There's this piece of media out there that had to have been created by a team that someone had to have seen at some point, yet it's somehow, for whatever reason, just out of our grasp. Maybe it only had a limited release in a specific area of the world, making it so only the most unassuming people have it. Possibly it only aired once when no one was paying attention and it got lost to time after long enough. Or in even rarer cases, some dipshit at the network might just have a practice of writing over old episodes for new ones, leaving tons of the show's masters lost forever. And when that media is lost for long enough, there will be some nostalgic so-and-so who goes online to try finding it, usually inciting a massive search campaign in the process. Really, it's quite amazing how dedicated some people can be to finding something so obscure. That's not necessarily what we're talking about though. No, instead we'll be taking a look at an even more outrageous phenomenon I've seen take place way less often. On occasion, a show will air, whether good or bad, and while there will be nothing specifically keeping people from watching it, they just never talk about it. Like ever. It may have been on TV a few times, got a DVD release, was put on streaming services, or more, yet you never see any discussion about it, almost like it never existed at all. That's the type of scenario I'm about to bring up for the show I'm talking about in this video. It aired back in November of 2014, got broadcast in multiple countries, is readily available on HBO Max, won Primetime Emmys, and was nominated for a few other accolades, yet it's only got 150 ratings on IMDb. The most popular video relating to it on YouTube has only 100k views, and it's so seemingly unknown that the guy who made the show has less Twitter followers than me. And I find that all rather strange considering the show's overall quality when looked at as a whole. I mean, it was popular enough to even be put in the OKKO crossover Nexus episode. That's basically like being given an Oscar for Best Picture. Why doesn't the world make any sense? Before going into specifics on what the show actually is, however, I should also go into a bit of detail about Cartoon Network miniseries, as it just so happens to hold that oh-so-rare title in their overarching library. Both you and I most likely already got the basic gist of what a miniseries is, a short collection of episodes for a series made to air as a special event for the network, sometimes for the purpose of gouging whether or not the series deserves to be given more if the creator wants to continue. For the most part though, Cartoon Network in particular has used miniseries to promote other popular shows they already have. I remember it was done with Teen Titans Go a couple of times, like a Stranded Island arc or America's Got Talent parody. Steven Universe Future and a few Adventure Time specials could also be put in this category. But if you've followed Cartoon Network for the past while, there's one original series you'll probably recognize above all others. Over the Garden Wall. When it comes to original programming shown as part of miniseries for Cartoon Network, this 10-episode series is often regarded as one of the best in the Cartoon Network catalog, and with good reason. It had a unique story, creepy atmosphere, a nice OST, and a dark undertone contributing to an experience not matched by most other cartoons for kids at the time or since. In fact, it was so good that it may have actually been one of the reasons as to why the series that came right after it was so overlooked. Remember when I said the show only had 150 ratings on IMDb? Well, for comparison's sake, Over the Garden Wall has just over 40,000 ratings. It's that much of a difference, and it's easy to see why from a logical perspective. When your network produces two miniseries coming out in succession of one another, and the first one of those two series is Over the Garden Wall, yeah, you're probably gonna have a tough time reaching the same level of critical love or fame. It's kinda like having a marathon of B-movies and the first to show is Evil Dead. You're kinda setting the audience's hopes up a little too high from the start. Nonetheless, I still feel like it's a shame nobody remembers the ironically titled Long Live the Royals. Airing originally in November of 2014 for a run of 5 consecutive episodes, Long Live the Royals is a series created by Jesus, that is a hard last name to pronounce. Sean Zell's about any placeholder royal family as they prepare for an event called the Yule Hare Festival, each episode focusing on a different member of the family and the various wacky shenanigans they all get into. There could be plenty of reasons for why my brain decided to remember this show above everything else, as I'll go into soon, but one way or another, it left an impression on 10-year-old me. And though I never really saw it after the initial premiere with a new episode shown every day of a single week, it always had that effect of me just barely remembering its details, and recently, after seeing the name pop up in my recommended for whatever magically bullshitty algorithm reason, I decided to give it another look, only to find almost no one really talked about it in any way. Even on those 5 cartoons you forget existed type deals, I couldn't find Long Live the Royals. So I guess you could consider this the cartoon every person who made those shitty forgotten cartoon lists forgot, which makes it all the more fascinating as to why that might be. As mentioned before, the series was created by Sean Zell's, a cartoonist who got his start at the birthplace of most well-known 2010s cartoons, Flapjack. More notably though, he served as one of the main writers for Regular Show throughout its entire run, and afterwards went on to create Close Enough alongside J.G. Quintel. I mentioned this because looking at the art style and writing for the series, you can see the clear influence Regular Show plays in the whole thing. Generally speaking, when a creator that's mostly done a single series tries to make a new one, they come off a little too reminiscent of the other and have a hard time standing out. But I'd say Long Live the Royals doesn't really fall into that pitfall. The art style in particular is reminiscent of Regular Show, but there are clear differences between the two that make them pretty different, such as Long Live the Royals characters being more detailed, putting greater emphasis on clothes and features like hair, whereas Regular Show's style is more rooted in simplicity. This isn't being said as a blight to either show, since the art styles both work well to match the tone and atmosphere of each respective series. One area where I think Long Live the Royals actually exceeds Regular Show is in its overall animation quality and backgrounds. The characters all have outlines to match their color tones, which is so much more visually appealing than regular black lines, and I noticed interestingly that Long Live the Royals puts a lot more effort into its shot composition. Regular Show is no stranger to crazy visuals or insane imagery, but Long Live the Royals takes more time to try unique angles, camera shots, have more going on in the background, even if it's little details like candles or flags moving, and everything just feels more dynamic in action. It can also get pretty experimental, and pulls it off well when doing so. The writing has a similar quality in that regard. The main difference between Regular Show and Long Live the Royals that makes them more unique viewing experiences are their casts, settings, and most importantly, the execution of their episode premises within the constraints of their setting. Regular Show has a simple premise in nature to make it more possible for anything to happen. Two guys work at a park with other employees, and nothing is off the table for how insane any seemingly mundane situation can end up. Long Live the Royals is a bit more constrained in that though the characters are equally wacky, the setting of a modern, yet also medieval kingdom makes it so the writing crew has to fit any story within that setting, and just like I said for the art style, I think it works in favor of the show rather than against it. The show has mountains of small jokes and references littered throughout making fun of the setting and attitudes around the time. Since it's a mix of old and new culture, you can show smartphones or rock concerts, but it's done using a setting that's also kind of stuck in the past, leading to funny gags when doing shit like getting fired or sneaking out of your house. The writing as a whole is impacted by the setting in that it's a lot more character focused, and so instead of having the insane premise of the episode guided along like the first few seasons of Regular Show, the interactions of said characters are spotlighted above everything else, so that makes the cast themselves even more important, and you know what? I think all of them are pretty charming and likable. For its main characters, the series has pretty straightforward archetypes of the punk girl Rosalind, the neurotic Peter, the troublemaker Alex, the oblivious king, and the posh queen. Since each episode is dedicated to expanding their personalities a bit more, I'd say the show does well giving each character enough screen time to not feel like anyone is being neglected. Since the rest of the cast is still involved with plots revolving around certain characters though, we still get all those great interactions between them. The characters might be archetypes going through what you'd expect their archetypes to go through on the average day, but there's a certain charm to it that makes you want to watch them a lot more. You can tell the gang all have more complexity to them, and you might even get to see that on occasion, but the lack of those deeper attributes doesn't take away from how fun it is. The only arguably annoying character is maybe Alex, but he still gets some growth by the end and doesn't have so much focus on him that it becomes irritating. I especially love the Queen because she's just so done with everyone's shit and does a good job representing every self-absorbed monarch in existence. The side cast was also surprisingly varied for the short amount of time we got to see them, and it really makes me want to see them all more because like the main five, they're all bursting with personality and are funny as fuck. Speaking of which, I wasn't expecting to laugh at such a short series as much as I did, but goddamn, I was gladly surprised. A major theme you'll see with Long Live the Royals is that it mainly takes seemingly basic plots and applies them to the setting in a different but familiar way. For example, in episode 3, the Queen is keeping everyone up with her gorilla snoring right as a foreign prince is coming over to sign a peace treaty, and thanks to the Queen's insecurity about her snoring, it progresses into the foreign prince thinking the royal family was planning to ambush him with a peasant attack right after saying his sister looked like a boar. The thing with that escalation is that instead of having a massive rise in stakes all at once, these scenarios in Long Live the Royals build up over time, gradually getting worse and aiding the comedy in spectacular ways, making every conflict feel earned and more humorous. The comedy in general for the series is much more dry than most Cartoon Network shows I've seen, using really literal jokes or visual gags whenever trying to make you laugh, and it's a style I actually appreciate quite a lot. So many goddamn comedy series try too hard to be off the walls and random, but there's an air of laid-backness to any joke told in LLTR, even if it's a serious moment, and in many cases it'll build on previous jokes, sometimes episodes later for viewers who chose to pay attention. I won't give any major spoilers, but the last joke of the final episode is a good example of what I'm talking about. In the few videos I've seen talking about Long Live the Royals, the most popular of which is a review with 2,000 views from 5 years ago, people seem to pass it off as funny but unremarkable, and I kind of look at it from a different perspective. It does have have character types that have been used before, and not every storyline is the pinnacle of drama or anything, but for what it tries to do, I'm really saddened we didn't get more of it. This feels like the kind of show that just begs to get like at least a full 3 seasons before being cancelled too soon, or at least a 20-episode season to look back on. We don't really get enough comedies focusing on aesthetics like that of Long Live the Royals, and it brings enough unique qualities in its 5-episode run to be both highly enjoyable and memorable in its own right. The setting is fun and allows for commentary on class discrimination through comedy. The animation and shot composition give it a visual style that can remind you of regular show while still definitely doing its own thing you can appreciate, and the characters are all likable in their own special ways, taking the archetypes placed on them and embracing it without feeling generic in the process. I didn't even mention the music so far, which has some great rock jams and a kick-ass theme song, all originally made by the creator and a few other musicians, only adding more to the charm of the overall show. Even every side character feels like it's just begging to be given a deeper look at, but with the short 11-minute runtime and limited episode run, we unfortunately never get that. In a way, that scarcity does add to the enjoyment, you know, savoring what you're given, but fuck it, I don't care about being some prissy asshole eating a 5mm dish at a French restaurant. I wish there was more of the show. There's so much potential for what more it could do that's just kinda left behind in it being a miniseries like it is, and that's kinda sad. In the end, I come back to the ever-looming question I had from the beginning. Why did this show fail to get an audience, or at least some kind of cult following? Well, it could be a lot of things. I already mentioned that the only other wholly original miniseries that came out a year before it was Over the Garden Wall. A pretty tough act to follow, considering how different of a show it is. Also, compared to OGW, LLTR is still short for a miniseries, being half the length of the former. Its style of airing once a day for 5 days could have played into its obscurity, since most kids just watch on Mondays and Fridays rather than doing so across a singular week. Worldwide, there were also some discrepancies between when and where it aired in the world, making it so people experienced it at very different times, and with social media as it was at the time, never really having a date where it was released worldwide could have kept it from getting traction in more territories. A weird tidbit I noticed between the British and American versions specifically was that the Queen, and no one else, had a different voice actress for some reason.
Rupert, you disgusting mongrel! You heard nothing! Guards, execute him! Rupert, you disgusting mongrel! You heard nothing! Guards, execute him!
I don't really have it as a potential reason for why the show didn't do well, but come on, at what other point am I gonna get to tell you such an obscure, weird fact about an already really obscure, almost never discussed TV show? Weirdly, ratings weren't terrible either as far as miniseries go, only really having slightly lower viewership than Over the Garden Wall. So I return to the question, why does no one ever, and I do mean ever, talk about this show? Honestly, I don't care. The main point of this video isn't to discuss the weird, almost creepy nature of how unknown this show seems to be for no reason. More so, I just want to tell you to go ahead and watch it because it deserves more fans. It's easily available, it's a fun watch, it's won primetime Emmys, so like not even those shitty daytime Emmys that they'll give to anyone, and it's only about 50 minutes total. The whole thing is like barely enough for something to be considered a feature film. You can stand to watch something for that long, even if you don't like it, and trust me, I think you'll like this if the rest of the video was anything to go by. Hopefully you'll take my word for it and check it out, because I know that at some point when I'm bored, I'll go back and take a look at the easy to get into, memorable series known as Long Live the Royals. Thanks for watching.